Okay, let's unpack this. We have been handed uh, a really fascinating and intensely detailed teaching from Feed His Sheep
Hmm.
production. And it treats the first night of Hanukkah not as, just the start of a holiday, but as what they're calling a critical spiritual threshold.
Right.
So we're diving deep into the foundation, the order, and the specific alignment that's required before any light can really multiply.
That's the whole mandate of this source material, and it's what makes this particular deep dive so focused. This teaching is, it's entirely built on covenant alignment and kingdom order.
Okay.
If you look at the source material, their whole philosophy is clear. You just cannot rush the foundation. If day one is misunderstood, if it's treated just as a symbol or, built on compromised ground, the whole structure that comes after
Everything else, then.
everything else, the acceleration, the growth, the illumination, it all becomes inherently unstable.
I find that so provocative. The core idea they're proposing is that Hanukkah begins with order, not light.
Yeah.
Most of us, we jump straight to the 8 nights of lighting. This source says, hold on, you have to establish the structure first. So our mission today is really to decode that structure. We'll look at the non-negotiable role of the Shamash, why the placement of that first candle has to be on the far right, and how this teaching radically redefines defilement as just misalignment. So what does this framework imply for you for sustainable authority and growth? Let's find out.
It's all about precedent, and that precedent begins, well, not with the 8 numbered candles, but with the 9th one, the Shamash.
Yeah, they lay this out as a foundational truth. Hanukkah doesn't start with 8 candles. It doesn't even start with one. It starts with the Shamash.
Right.
And that figure is like the necessary spiritual precedent for everything that follows.
Precisely. They argue the Shamash is the key to establishing what they call an unbreakable kingdom law, and the rules for it. They're set apart to reflect that law. It's explicitly not counted among the 8.
It's separate.
It's separate, it's set above them, and critically, it is the only flame allowed to light the others.
So the axiom here isn't just procedural, it's theological. The law is that sustainable light has to come from the right source before it can multiply in the right order.
Yes.
It seems almost obvious, but I think it has profound implications for how you approach the rest of the week.
It does, especially when you bring in the context of messianic fulfillment. The source material explains that the Shamash represents Yeshua Jesus, the servant king, the light of the world.
The original source.
He is the original source that all other light flows from, which is why he's set apart and uncounted.
Here's where the scriptural context gets really compelling for me. The source specifically points out that Jesus didn't say he brings light. He said, I am the light of the world.
A critical distinction.
That difference in phrasing I am versus I bring, it's huge in this teaching. It implies the light he carries isn't generated or maintained by human effort or agreement or momentum. He just is light.
He is the eternal source, not like a temporary power generator.
Exactly.
And that servanthood role, the Shamash, that's what allows the transfer to even happen. The servanthood is the vehicle for the light.
So we've established the source. Now we move to the first recipient of that light, the first candle. Why does its placement matter so much? On night 1, only one candle is placed, and it has to be on the far right side of the menorah.
And the source material is very, very explicit about this. This is not a decorative choice.
Right.
It's not for convenience. It's fundamentally covenantal. To get why the far right is non-negotiable, you really have to track what it means throughout Scripture.
So let's unpack that for a minute. What does the right side consistently symbolize in this context?
Well, it consistently represents authority, favor, sonship, strength, and victory. It's a position, not an action you take.
Okay.
And the ultimate connection, which they really emphasize, is that Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father. That's the place of ultimate authority and favor.
So when this teaching instructs you to light the first candle on the far right, it's a declaration. It's saying your journey, your whole week of seeking light, it begins not with personal striving, but in a pre-established covenant position.
That's it.
It means day 1 starts with receiving alignment, not by, initiating work.
Exactly. It's about establishing your identity and your placement before you do the work of multiplication. If you try to light a candle in the middle or on the left, You're declaring that you're seeking light through your own effort.
Through a self-chosen path.
A self-chosen path rather than resting in the correct position of favor.
Okay, so building on that,
Mhm.
that concept of correct position, the teaching then defines what the first candle actually represents, and it cites Rabbi Kurt Landry's framework.
Right.
The first candle represents being called, chosen, and blessed to be one with God. This is the candle of oneness.
And here we hit another point of precedence. The source material really stresses that before any external evidence, any authority, any witness, fruit, acceleration, any increase can happen, this oneness has to be established.
It's the absolute prerequisite.
It is. The prayer they cite to cement this is from John 17, Jesus' prayer, that they may be one, just as we are one.
Okay, now this is where we need to slow down,
Yeah.
because the teaching makes a really vital distinction about what kind of oneness this is.
Yes.
It's not defined as, a warm emotional intimacy. It's called governmental alignment. That's a serious structural term. What do they mean by that?
They mean that the oneness is expressed through allegiance and obedience to a recognized structure of authority. It's not about how you feel about God. It's about whose government you're submitting to in your daily life.
So feelings are secondary.
Emotional intimacy is a byproduct of alignment, but alignment is a prerequisite. It's a matter of order.
So for the listener, how does this governmental alignment actually manifest on day one? What's the practical declaration that's being made?
The declaration is a structural commitment. It's saying, I belong to God. I am restored through Messiah. I reject independence and self-sourcing. And crucially, it means realigning your life to covenant order, acknowledging there's a defined kingdom structure and you're choosing to follow its rules.
Even if they don't make sense to worldly logic.
Especially then. It's about prioritizing the spiritual governance of your life.
It makes perfect sense. Okay, so once the source is acknowledged and the position of oneness is chosen, the teaching pivots pretty dramatically into what's needed for that light to stay lit.
Mm-hmm.
This is the section on cleansing and separation, and it is maybe the most challenging part of this whole deep dive. Day one isn't just about lighting something new.
Yeah.
It's about removing what contaminates the space.
And this takes us right back to the historical context of Hanukkah. The Maccabees didn't just find some oil. First, they had to cleanse the altar, remove the defilement, destroy the foreign idols the Greeks had put there.
Before worship could even be restored.
Right. Before anything holy could happen.
And that historical necessity leads to this powerful kingdom axiom they talk about that governs all spiritual authority. You cannot light a holy flame on a contaminated altar.
So the question then becomes, if we're talking about spiritual cleansing, what is the defilement this source material is focused on? And the teaching, it expands the definition way beyond traditional moral failure.
Yes, this definition is radical. Defilement, in this framework, is fundamentally misalignment. And they break down exactly what that looks like in a person's life.
They describe 4 key ways misalignment shows up and contaminates the altar. The first is compromise for convenience, choosing the easy way over the right way.
We've all done that.
Oh, yeah. The second is tolerating things that weaken your spiritual authority, those small ongoing leaks.
And the third and fourth are probably the most relevant to a high-performing audience. They talk about adopting a Greek or performance-driven mindset.
Right.
And they specifically name striving instead of abiding.
That's the critical connection right there. They are saying that striving, working hard out of anxiety, pushing for results, using your own self-will is a form of contamination.
Wow.
It's an act of independence. You're using your own strength, which is inherently defiled because it's sourced outside the Shamash and outside that covenant order you're supposed to be in. You're trying to illuminate yourself.
That is a fascinating challenge to the modern pursuit of success. We're constantly taught that striving is good. It's hustle culture. But here, that internal push is treated like an impurity that blocks the light's authority.
Because it's essentially trying to earn your alignment instead of receiving it.
Right, in that covenant position.
Exactly. The source argues that pursuing results without genuine righteousness or results without proper alignment is just spiritual contamination. It forces a decision. That's why they bring up Jesus' warning, you cannot serve 2 masters.
Because misalignment is serving your own strength.
Which ultimately pollutes the very authority you're trying to gain.
So day one really forces a spiritual inventory. What contamination, what misalignment, what striving has to be removed before that single light is lit on the far right.
And this choice, the integrity of day one, this determines the power of the entire feast that follows. The stakes are They're incredibly high for anyone pursuing sustained influence or growth.
Let's break down those stakes. What happens if, spiritually speaking, this foundational alignment of day one is, skipped versus if it's honored?
The source material warns that if you skip this step, you might still get growth, but the consequence is severe. Acceleration produces anxiety. Growth produces burnout. Increase produces fear.
You're running on the wrong fuel.
You're running on the wrong fuel. You gain momentum, but you lack the structure to carry it, and it just leads to exhaustion. It's self-sourced power.
But if day one is honored, the result is the opposite.
Completely. Grace replaces striving, authority replaces mere effort, and the light multiplies without that depletion that comes from self-reliance. It's the difference between operating out of exhaustion and operating out of a position of rest.
And this leads to the distinction that just ties the whole teaching together. Light without alignment might shine brightly, but it will not rule. Day one determines whether the other 7 candles will govern or merely glow.
That's the phrase.
Let's elaborate on that distinction for a minute. Govern or merely glow.
Yeah.
If something just glows, it's visible, maybe it's even impressive. But what does it lack that governing light has?
Governing light possesses authority. It actually changes the atmosphere, it sustains impact. A glowing light is temporary, it can be snuffed out by circumstances or just burns itself out because it's using its own fuel.
Okay.
Governing light operates out of that covenant position, which means it's sustained by the eternal source, the Shamash, and therefore its influence isn't temporary or dependent on human effort. It establishes kingdom order wherever it shows up.
So that single small light lit on the first day is actually a massive spiritual transaction.
It is.
When the Shamash lights that first candle, covenant oneness is restored, the personal temple is rededicated.
Through the cleansing of striving and misalignment.
And your authority is repositioned correctly on the right side.
It's the foundational reset, and because the source is the servant king, the light that's transferred isn't just illumination, it's an impartation of the correct identity. As it says in John, darkness isn't defeated by just turning up the intensity of human effort. It's displaced, or governed, by rightly sourced light.
That brings us full circle to why this ministry, Feed His Sheep Production, structures their approach so rigidly. They use this exact order for all their teachings because they want to build true, not fast.
Right.
The sequence is defined. Source, which is the Shamash, then cleansing and alignment on day one, then authority and witness leading to fruitfulness and multiplication, and finally, sustainable kingdom impact.
The whole system depends on the integrity of that first, very deliberate step.
And the final piece of this deep dive is the culminating declaration made when the candle is lit.
It's really a reaffirmation of everything we've talked about.
Acknowledging Jesus as the Shamash, a restoration to that covenant position, breaking agreement with compromise, and specifically rejecting the sin of striving.
Choosing oneness and alignment instead. It's the moment you choose governance over just glowing.
It's the choice.
Ultimately, the entire core message of this deep dive, it really comes down to one powerful simplicity. Hanukkah begins with one light, one decision, one alignment. You must first honor the Shamash. Then, you place the first candle in the position of authority on the right. Only then can the 7 days of multiplication follow in perfect order. It's a foundational instruction for sustainable spiritual power.
We've seen that this source defines striving, what our culture sees as its highest virtue, as a form of defilement and misalignment, and it warns that it leads to burnout, anxiety, and ultimately unsustainable increase. So the powerful question for you to consider is this. How often in your own pursuit of results or increase do you find yourself building momentum out of striving rather than resting in alignment, and thereby unintentionally contaminating the very altar you seek to light? That is a profound thought to mull on as you approach any new season of growth.